boy Luke, back for another PGA DFS video. This time we've got our top 6 value plays at this week's Houston Open. And what we do in this video is we're going to cover our top plays, priced $7,500 and below for this main slate. And these guys are not only going to have decent floor projections, but also the top end upside necessary for these large field tournaments. And this week's field in particular, it's just a little bit strange. It's very top heavy. We have a ton of studs to pick from, but when we get down into this value tier, things really start to thin out. So we're going to have to be a little bit more stringent when picking our guys down low, and that's exactly what this video is going to be for. A super quick reminder before we hop into it, but we already have my course breakdown and my core plays already up on the channel. So if you guys are looking for those, make sure to check out the description. A link will be there for both. We also have our weekly PGA DFS live stream that is going to be on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to cover the weather, my player pool, ownership, any questions that you guys have. So I'll also put a link down in the description for that so you guys can set a reminder so you don't miss that. Again, that is 6:30 on Wednesday evening. But without further delay, let's hop right into the value plays here for the Houston Open. For the first value play, we have Francesco Molinari at $6,600 on Draftkings. Somebody who hasn't played much of late. We did see him last week at the Mayakoba Championship, and he got off to a really good start with 6 under in that first round. Ended up falling down the stretch, falling so much that he ended up missing the cut over there for Mayakoba, but I'm not going to hold that against him. El Camaleon is an extremely difficult golf course, especially if you don't have it off the tee. There's a ton of hazards. There's a ton of places where you can lose balls that don't even have hazard lines. So a lot of players, even though they were playing well last week, a lot of them just were subject to that volatility. We saw that on Saturday and Sunday. Some of the guys that were playing the best golf in the entire field faltered down the stretch because of that volatility. It's kind of like a TPC Sawgrass where you have so much water in play where even if you have your game, sometimes you're going to get slightly unlucky. So a lot of the guys that missed the cut last week at Mayakoba, I'm not going to be holding that against them. A lot of people in the industry will be a little bit more likely to overreact to that type of news, but something, again, I'm not going to be using as too much of a downgrade. In terms of Francesco Molinari's course fit, he ranks as a decent course fit. Again, the reason why the metric is so low on him right there is just because we haven't seen him very often, but he's got very solid iron play for his career. He's also been one of the best around the green players in the entire world, particularly on Bermuda grass as well. We've seen it at the Augusta National for the Masters. We've seen it at a few other US Opens, Open Championships, that kind of thing. This guy is an absolute wizard when it comes to around the green play. The last 2 times we've seen Molinari show up on tour and have any type of success, last time was at the US Open. He had a 13th place finish there. He also had an 8th place finish at the Genesis Invitational. Both of those extremely hard tracks, slightly comparable to what we have this week here at Memorial Park. We had a winner at just 13 under par last year, and that was with beautiful weather. If there's any semblance of wind, this place could get really, really ugly really, really fast. So those are 2 comp courses I'm definitely looking at. In terms of recent form, again, the metrics don't look great, but we just haven't seen him much of late, and that's despite missing a cut last week. He was -6 at one point, so again, was playing extremely well, kind of fell victim to some of that volatility like we've already talked about. It's also of note that he has a 10th place finish at the Farmers this year, also a 9th place finish at the American Express here in 2021. So a lot of people aren't considering Molinari, having a very good season. They're not considering that he's in decent form. It's been opportunity, right? He hasn't been out here very often. There hasn't been that many chances for him to go out and have that type of splash finish, but he still posted 4 top 13 finishes this year. That is of note. Somebody who's a good course fit, and I'll be using as a value play this week. Next up, we have Stephan Jaeger at $6,700, one of the new Korn Ferry Tour graduates. He's a rookie here on the PGA Tour and seemingly a very good course fit for this venue. He's somebody who relies on the around the green play, much like a Francesco Molinari, and here with these tough greens, that is going to be extremely helpful. This course is also going to suit his eye on the greens as well, tend to be some of the trickier greens to putt, and Stephan Jaeger is one of the best putters that we've ever seen on the Korn Ferry Tour. He ranked #1 last year in putting for the entire tour, and in fact, for the Korn Ferry Tour's history, only 2 other players have averaged less putts per round than Stephan Jaeger. So somebody who played a ton over there as well, so it's not a sample size issue. So I'd like him in terms of a course fit. If we take a look at a recent form perspective, it's slightly better. He's a top 50 recent form rank, which again, it's not going to make us run to the window to go bet him or anything like that, but he's rotated between a made cut and a missed cut for every start here on the PGA Tour. So naturally, after a missed cut last week, he's due to make a cut this time around. And while obviously that's not why I'm picking him this week, he hasn't made a major splash on tour yet, but a lot of these golf courses haven't really fit his eye. Some of them have been longer, some of them have been a little bit more focused on approach play. This week, it's all about getting up and down. It's all about avoiding the bogeys. So I think if he's going to break out, this is when we're going to see it. For all of the people that came out of the Korn Ferry Tour last year, Stephan Jaeger, Will Zalatoris, Mito Pereira, those were the three names you were hearing about. And the only one of those three that has yet to make a major splash is Jaeger. So I'm expecting that to happen over these next few weeks. And I'll definitely be playing him here at Memorial Park. And now for our number 4 value play. We have Lee Westwood at an even $7,000, somebody who we also haven't seen play very often. That is going to be a little bit of a theme with these first 3 value picks here, but seemingly a great course fit. You know, anytime we think of a hard track, we think of major championship type conditions, we know Lee Westwood's going to be in contention. He's just made for these tough venues. Just last year, he has a 2nd place finish at the Players Championship and Arnold Palmer Invitational, which are both notoriously tough tracks and courses that I use as comps for Memorial Park. And if we zoom out even further, if we take a look at his entire year last year, all of his top 5 finishes over the last 2 years are at the following golf courses. We already know about the Players in the API. He also has a tied for 4th at the Honda Classic and a tied for 4th at the Open Championship, and that was at Royal Portrush. All those courses are great comps. They're difficult courses with some really tough greens where wind can become a factor. And even though wind wasn't a factor in last year's iteration, that's because we had beautiful weather. This is Texas. Specifically Texas at this time of year, it gets extremely windy. So we have no idea what the wind is going to look like. And if it gets even more difficult, fire up even more Lee Westwood. This guy is from England. He's been particularly good in the past in windy conditions. So again, all signs point to this being one of the best course fits on the entire slate. If we take a look at recent form, again, it's been completely underrated in my opinion, much like a Stephan Jaeger, much like a Francesco Molinari. He hasn't played much since getting married, but if we take a look, he's made 8 of his last 9 cuts. He also made it the whole way, almost the whole way to Eastlake last year. Made it the whole way to the BMW Championship. Didn't crack that top 30, but that was a really tough task considering he only made 11 PGA Tour starts last year. So I'm worried about the rust slightly. Again, he got married. He decided to take a month or 2 off, and who could blame the guy? But if he can shake that rust early, which he's inevitably going to have, that's why he's here at $7,000. That is why he's being completely overlooked by the field. But if he goes out and shakes that in 2 or 3 holes, watch out. This guy is a great course fit. He showed some great form last year, and definitely somebody I'll be including in my player pool. And real quickly before we get to number 3, just want to remind you guys about my Patreon page. So if you guys are looking for projections for every player in this week's field, not just the guys I can touch on here for this value plays video or for my core plays, make sure to go ahead and check that out. On there, it is just $1 for the month. I go over my player projections. We have custom model rankings, whether that's for recent form or course fit. We also talk about ownership. We have my player pool on there. You guys get access to the GS Loot Community Discord, which is by far the most underrated part of the subscription. You get access to ask me questions at any point. You get access to the rest of the community. Tons of bright-minded people in there that are winning a ton of cash. So highly recommend you guys go ahead and check that out. Again, the best part about it, only $1 for the month, 25 cents a week for all of those projections. You are not going to find a better deal elsewhere. But with all of the shameless plugs out of the way, let's pop back into the value plays here. At number 3, we have Brian Harman at $7,100, somebody who historically is one of the better course fits in the entire field. We'll get to the recent form here in a second. It is far from pretty. Last 4 or 5 events for Harman have been far from ideal, but again, we'll get to that here in a second. His skill set, again, one of the best for this golf course. He's somebody who's some of the best long irons on tour. From approach over 200 yards, he ranks top 5 in the entire tour, not just for this field. And if we take a look at the setup here at Memorial Park, we have a ton of 500 plus yard par 4s. It's going to be particularly useful at this type of venue. And when we think of Brian Harman, we also think of a short game wizard, somebody who's very good around the green, tends to be one of the better putters on tour as well, which will both be extremely helpful for this week. If we take a look at recent form, I promise we get there. Oh boy, that's all I really want to say about it. He's somebody who was absolutely dealing from June of last year in 2020 all the way up until the Wyndham Championship 3 months ago. If we take a look at that stretch of golf, he has 15 top 25s, 6 top 10s, and 3 top 5s. So the guy was on absolute fire. He only missed the cut in 6 events out of 39 starts. So well above the tour average in terms of making cuts. He was one of the more consistent players on the PGA Tour as well. But of late, that has not been the case. Since the Wyndham Championship, he has made just one cut. He has 4 missed cuts. He has lost strokes ball striking in every single event. So it really begs the question, is Brian Harman suddenly regressed into, quite frankly, not a PGA Tour level player? Or is he just having an off month, which happens to literally everyone in the game of golf? To me, it's quite obvious. Clearly, he's just having a little bit of a rough stretch, which any golfer that has played for an extended period of time knows happens. There'll be a time where you get out on the golf course, you feel like your swing is completely broken, and you got to work on it for 3 or 4 weeks. That happens from time to time. The beauty with Brian Harman is that he hasn't been playing a ton of late. He's clearly been working on his game, and if he brings his best self to this golf course, he's not only in line to potentially contend, but potentially win this golf tournament. So somebody I'm considering firing a bet on to win this damn thing, because I'm counting on that regression happening very soon. I mean, for that stretch of golf from June of 2020 up until about just 2 months ago, there's arguably only 5 or 6 players on tour that had better results than him. He was extremely consistent, was posting, again, 3 top 5s, 6 top 10s, 15 top 25s. Not many other players in the world can say that. Next up, we have Kevin Streelman, who, boy, he burned me last week. He was somebody I used as a core play. I really expected him to play well there at Mayakoba, a course that prioritized accuracy off the tee. Obviously, he's a world-class iron player. The issue with Streelman is he couldn't make a putt. The guy was putting himself in position left and right, but just couldn't make a damn thing. So another story here where the recent form doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. If we take a look at course fit to begin, the course fit, he's a great match for Memorial Park. We know that this guy's very solid with his ball striking. That's always going to be useful. But more than anything, he's very good around the green. This guy is extremely skilled at getting up and down, particularly on some of these harder greens to read. And just taking a look into the tough conditions, why he's been so successful on these tough greens. First off, let's just talk about the results. It's glaring. He has a top 20 at the Open Championship this year, a top 15 at the US Open, and even an 8th place finish at the PGA Championship. Obviously, at those major championships, you're getting some of the toughest conditions we see all year. And frankly, this setup at Memorial Park looks a lot more like a major championship than it does a regular PGA Tour event. So you love to see that kind of correlation. You love to see that kind of success in the past for somebody like Streelman. I think a lot of that has to do with his approach play, like we've already mentioned, but also the driving accuracy, which should have been useful last week at Mayakoba. Didn't end up being as useful as it could have been, though. And both of those are key stats and a lot of the reason why I like him this week. And now for the recent form. Again, it doesn't really tell the whole story. Aside from the missed cut at Mayakoba, which people are seemingly holding over his head, he's been on a nice run of play. He's made 7 cuts in a row, which a lot of people probably wouldn't expect. You know, he's been slightly disappointing of late. He's been relatively chalky over these last 3 or 4 events as well. And while he hasn't cracked an optimal lineup, he's still at least been making cuts and getting by. So it's not like this guy's game is completely lost or anything like that. It's not like he hasn't played for 3-4 months like some of the other people on this list. And much like I mentioned with Molinari, who knows what happened last week at Mayakoba? It was one of the events where we didn't have shot length. There was no way for us to tell how these guys ended up missing the cut. For all we know, Streelman could have hit 2 or 3 balls, had lost balls into those jungles, and just quite frankly gone unlucky. There was at least 5 or 6 guys last week that definitely had that happen. So for me, that missed cut, not going to be as large of a red flag as it is for the rest of the field, and that's why he makes it in my values list. But now at number 1, guys, this guy is completely mispriced. Why the hell is Charley Hoffman $7,300? Again, the price, I just don't get it. That's why he makes this list. If we take a look at his course fit, he's also a great course fit. He represents one of the best course fits in this value tier. Even better than somebody like a Brian Harman. He has exceptional iron play. He also has the around the green play to save himself when he needs to as well. And while he isn't a Bermuda specialist, at least with his putting, he's somebody who makes more putts on it than most other surfaces. He's actually a positive putter, which he can't say for the other 4 surfaces. In terms of the driver, he's not one of the more accurate drivers on the PGA Tour, but this golf course has some length to it. So the fact that he is above the PGA Tour average in terms of distance should at least nullify some of the accuracy issues that he has from time to time. If you take a look at the recent form, this is where the pricing comes in my opinion. 85th in terms of recent form ranking. He has made 20 of his last 22 cuts, though. So again, when we take a little bit of a broader approach to it, he's clearly been a lot better recent than people are giving him credit for. He has 4 top 10s during that stretch as well. And just like many others on the list, yes, he missed the cut at the Mayakoba Championship, and I couldn't give 2 shits about it. That's all for this week's value plays. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you've got as your favorite value play for this slate. Make sure he's priced $7,500 and below. and go ahead and let me know why as well. I always love to hear from you. I always love to get some debate going down there in those comments. And as always, guys, I really appreciate all of your support here on the channel. If you guys haven't already gotten a chance to like the video, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. That way you guys don't miss any of the content I'm posting in the future. Again, we're going to have fades and sleepers coming out later in the week. We're going to have that live stream on Wednesday evening at 6:30 to go over questions that you have. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of that. We also have football content here on the channel, some UFC content from time to time. So something for everyone. So until next time, good luck with all of your lineups and peace.